Hey, welcome back to the stash. Now, the hopeful possibility of an end to what is known as Spider-Man fans' worst nightmare is soon upon us. With Zeb Wells looking likely to leave the book after his next big story arc where he reuses the same concept he threw together not even a year ago.
Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
We have to go through another filler tie-in issue for Marvel's new big event called Blood Hunt. It just sort of feels like every other week Marvel has just a new tie-in event to drag the reader through. I guess vampires can be cool given the right writers, but it's never really been my thing, I guess. But I do like Blade and Morbius for the most part. Does anyone remember when a big tie-in event actually felt like a big deal? I mean, we had Gang War not that long ago, and now this? But anyway, join us today as we go over the latest installment of ASM with the Amazing Spider-Man issue 49. But before we get into that, we are trying to reach 1,500 subscribers before the end of the month, and with your help, I know we can do it. So if you like Spidey or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. We do also have a channel membership for a very small price with a bunch of cool little perks, so it's there in case you wanted to support that channel in the extra way possible. But anyway, with all that being said, let's get straight back into the video. So just in case you have no idea about Blood Hunt like myself before reading this comic book, I have a quick recap. So basically the world has just been draped in the eternal night, ushering the new era of the vampires. Without fear of the sunrise, vampires across the globe have taken their place as the rightful apex predators of Earth, and the never-ending feeding frenzy is on. The streets of New York City have descended into utter chaos as vampires hunt down its millions of citizens. Can Spider-Man make a difference, or is he just an amped-up juice box in the making? So our story begins with Kareem, who I believe worked for the Tombstone at the start of the series, looking for White Rabbit. When he goes upstairs, he's in for a nasty surprise. It turns out White Rabbit has been bit and is now a vampire. We cut to see Spider-Man swinging through the panicked streets of New York. Basically, there's an army of vampires flying around the city, thirsty for blood, and now what the heroes and civilians of the Marvel Universe were counting on was for the sunrise to deal with them all. However, it was meant to come up about 4 hours ago. This just leaves Spidey trying to do a form of damage control and save whoever he can. Now, Zeb Wells tries to do some character building using Peter's inner monologue, saying how it's freeing to fight monsters because it's clear and obvious who the bad guys are. Therefore, using this mindset, it leaves no internal debate over who's right and wrong. But now, if we want to be really technical, there still would be a form of an internal debate, that these new modern writers just love to throw at our heroes. Look at Batman for an example, who went from a protector of Gotham taking down thugs who did bad things, to now someone who questions what their true motives are and justifies them running amok in his city. Even Spider-Man under Dan Slott had him questioning if he was racist for fighting a bunch of Asian goons while he was in Asia. But here, that question the hero could impose on themselves would be relating to the fact that these vampires are technically all victims. They didn't choose to become a monster, and in fact later on, we're shown that they still have a conscious and are aware of their actions which they can't control or resist. So even when Zeb Wells thought he was being clever, it's still all just built on a false presumption. One that he himself contradicts many times within this single comic book.
What's the point?
Now, Pete and MJ devise a plan because they just seem to work really well together. Who would have guessed? Where she'd basically just see to Randy and Aunt Anna and text Peter if anything went south. Now, someone did message Peter, but it wasn't MJ. He ended the text with, "Tell him it's me." Once arrived, Kareem is shocked that Spidey actually showed up, and naturally Peter's pissed that Kareem assumed he's worth of a "it's me" privilege. Now, I will admit that reading this was pretty funny. Like, for once, Zeb Wells didn't try to just inject comedy into the script through something stupid like Kingpin whacking Peter like he's just a lost kid. Instead, he made it just feel a bit more natural this time. Kareem is begging Spidey for help, saying that White Rabbit is in trouble, and Pete's just not having any of it, right until he hits him with the classic, "You're a hero, you help people" line. It's such a simple yet effective trope used in comics, and it works here like a charm. It gives off this feeling that despite the bad guys usually hating the hero, in our case Spidey, they still have an understanding of who he is as a person. Kareem and Spidey come up with a quick plan to stab the vampire that got her with a stake to set White Rabbit free. Now when we go inside, it's where my problems with this issue begin to rise again. So after Spidey gets terrified over rats running around, White Rabbit not only beats the shit out of him, but scares him to death at almost every instance, and he needs Kareem to save the day. Mind you, this is the guy who's fought Morbius on multiple occasions and even gotten bitten by him once or twice. And how can we forget that earlier in this book, he was taking down vampires with such ease in the middle of a vampire-infested New York City?
Are you serious?
So what's so different here? How did he suddenly turn from Spider-Man who acts like Spider-Man to a scared kid running away from a monster? You know, each time I read something like this, I just always think back to the iconic page from JMS where he's fighting for his life against Morlun. You've got the costume. You've got the power. You're Spider-Man. Act like it. Great power, great responsibility, and a great left hook. Goosebumps. I love that page so much. I love that whole story. Where's that Spider-Man gone? Because there's just no way that this doofus and that absolute Chad are one and the same.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
Now, after the White Rabbit is locked in the closet thanks to King Kareem, Spidey goes on the hunt for the other vampire in the building and just once again pisses himself with another jump scare. But here is where I mentioned before about the vampires technically being victims of the story. This guy actually chained himself up after biting Rabbit so he wouldn't hurt anyone else. And, you know, he sees Spidey as his savior because he believes he's come to kill him. He's welcoming his death, even begging for it, but Spidey just realizes he doesn't have what it takes to do it and promises he'll be safe. Until Kareem stabs him with a stake and kills him. Better luck next time! It turns out that Kareem set up Spidey to help save himself since Rabbit bit him when he first found her. Who knew that you couldn't trust a common criminal? But then, dare I say, we get a good scene with Spider-Man? Kareem explains that this is a war and casualties are a part of said war, and nobody cares about them. But this causes Spider-Man to storm off, telling Kareem he's wrong because he cares. He looks down upon the streets of New York. He's realized that it's gotten much, much worse out there. He whispers to himself, stop it, until he screams at full rage and runs wild, stopping as many vampires as he can. Our story ends on a cliffhanger, including the Lizard finding Spider-Man with what looks like the two preparing for another battle. Wait, hang on a second. This was just one giant ad. The whole point of this was just to promote a one-off Bloodhound Spider-Man special. This relates to my theory as to why this issue was actually decently written for the most part. Now, obviously this is a company-wide event affecting every Marvel title in the 616, therefore making this not a Spider-Man-centric tale, therefore it's not made by Zeb Wells, therefore he's being forced to follow someone else's script. Now, of course, he still manages to sneak in Peter being a total wimp and him being super inconsistent. I mean, Peter's tangled with Morbius and Dracula himself in the past, but here it feels like he's fighting vampires for the first time in his career. Now, I'm sure Insomniac loved that part of the story, but to be honest, this was probably the best issue in this entire volume of Spider-Man comics. Plus, you know, it's not really saying much, though, when Zeb Wells is sort of on a guideline, a strict guideline of rules he has to follow for this one, and considering that he's following someone else's script. Wouldn't it be cool, though, if Paul got turned into a vampire and then Blade just took care of him? And I can't lie, I really enjoyed John Romita Jr.'s art on this one. It felt much more in proportion than his previous work on this title, and as a big fan of his 90s and, 2000 Spidey and his late 80s Daredevil work, I'm just so happy to see that's, a form of a comeback from him. I mean, across, Twitter and even some of my own previous videos, I have been very critical of John Romita Jr.'s work in this series, and that's just because it just felt like he wasn't really trying anymore. I don't blame him, especially if he sort of works or he bases his energy off the script, and he was just given so much shit through Zeb Wells, he just probably gave up at that point. But it sucks, because I want John Romita Jr. to succeed. He's one of my favorite comic book artists. He's so influential, even for my own artwork that I draw myself. I love to sort of try to do his style as well, especially in his prime. But just a lot of my favorite Spidey stories in general, I associate John Romita Jr. with, because considering it was a lot of his artwork during the early 2000s stuff with JMS, and it's one of my favorite runs ever from Spidey. So I do hope in a way that this could be his comeback, in a sense, and he can just sort of keep this streak going, because I have to admit, even his covers of recent have been really bad, especially for Daredevil as well. Overall, this issue wasn't anything good, however, it definitely wasn't as bad as what we've had before. Granted, there's plenty of reasons as to why the story wasn't as brain dead, but unfortunately for us, it's only going to get much, much worse with issue 50, because it's sadly time for the Sinister Six and the Spider-Goblin again. Lord help us all. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. Let me know what you thought of this issue down below. Did you enjoy it? It was one of the better ones from Zeb Wells. To be honest, I just can't wait for this next story to just be over with. I just want to skip this entire arc and just hopefully by the end of issue 54, I think, we get a new writer. If he's staying past this book is long gone and he's going to do even more damage to the character, so fun, right? But anyway, be sure to tune in next time, same web time, same web channel. Thank you guys again for watching and see you in the next one.